I know pretty much all of the rest of YouTube has already done their Star Wars Celebration recaps, but I was out of town this past weekend. I'm going to talk about some things. In my opinion, and I think most people's opinions, the three biggest news stories of Star Wars Celebration 2017 were the trailer reveals for Star Wars Battlefront 2, Star Wars Rebels Season 4, and of course, Star Wars The Last Jedi. I want to run down my thoughts on all three of these things in the order of importance that they are to me, not to diminish Star Wars Battlefront 2, but let's lead off with that. So the first Star Wars Battlefront game of this current reboot of the franchise, I really enjoyed. I was a little bit late to the party. I didn't actually purchase it until this past winter, and I am horrendously bad at it, but nonetheless, it's a game that I still enjoyed, whether it be the single-player campaigns, where it's pretty much a race for points, or the multiplayer battles. And while it was indeed a very good game, it also was a very flawed game. Even John Boyega went as far as to point out that the lack of a single-player campaign is a glaring hole in this game, and it almost feels like, in a way, that EA rushed this game out to try and coincide with the same timetable of release of The Force Awakens, cashing in on things like the Battle of Jakku and just the overall Star Wars hype arguably being at an all-time high. I think the result was we got an unfinished product that eventually came with a lot of DLC, which was cool, but again, there was a lot about it that was missing. From the first look of Star Wars Battlefront 2, it appears that they're going to patch up all those holes that the first game had, or at least that biggest hole of a lack of a single-player campaign. So from the looks of this trailer, it appears that the single-player campaign is going to focus around a young Special Forces Imperial soldier whose last orders she ever received were to the forest moon of Endor, where she personally witnessed the second Death Star explode. And I also have to say that I love the concept of seeing the remnants and what's left of the Empire after the Battle of Endor being like, fuck, guys, we're screwed. We gotta bail. We also hear the line that she's waited 30 years for this, as they show the First Order base from The Force Awakens and a bunch of TIE fighters taking off. So it would lead one to believe that this is sort of gonna bridge a gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. As to how much of that time span they're going to cover, I'd almost think they'd have to cover all of it, because if it starts on the forest moon of Endor with the Death Star exploding and ends up 30 years later, the dots connect. And it kind of makes you wonder if they're regretting a little bit shooting their load early with the Battle of Jakku DLC for the first Battlefront game, seeing as how that's a pretty major event within this part of the Star Wars timeline. But on top of that, I am excited to see what they do with this multiplayer battles across all eras aspect of things. We see things as far back as Darth Maul, all the way up ahead to Kylo Ren and Rey. So you've got to think that the multiplayer aspect is going to cover a whole lot of the timeline. Either way, I am stoked to see what kind of improvements they make with the actual gameplay, and if it's good enough, this will probably be the thing that finally pushes me to get a PS4, because I seriously suck balls at playing a first-person shooter on the PC. Next up, we have the Season 4 trailer for Star Wars Rebels, which I have to admit I was a little bit surprised that we got already, seeing as how Season 3 just barely wrapped up like a month ago. And as exciting as it is to see, it does weigh a little bit heavier knowing that this is going to be the final season of the show. Nonetheless, the trailer opens up with a little bit of a narrative from Hera, talking about Ezra, talking about Sabine, and the rest of the crew of the Ghost, and how they all came to fight together for a common cause against a common evil. Although it did seem like that narration focused a decent bit heavier on both Ezra and Sabine, as if they're sort of the two main characters going forward through Season 4. And when we see a lot of clips of Mandalorian wars and Mandalorians fighting together, and Ezra fighting alongside them, kind of starts to make sense. Aside from a lot of the intrigue surrounding the wars going on with the Mandalorians and the fact that they would let a Jedi Padawan fight alongside them, I don't know what else to take from this trailer. I think there's going to be a lot of things that obviously come to play out over the course of a 20 or so episode season, and we've probably seen just a few clips here and there that aren't tied together necessarily in any way. I think part of that might be due to the fact that we weren't left on as much of a cliffhanger after Season 3 as we were after Season 2. The Darth Maul storyline is wrapped up, whereas coming out of Season 2, that intrigue was through the freaking roof to see where they were going to go with that. That doesn't mean there isn't intrigue though, because we do see see Saw Gerrera briefly in this trailer, and we do see Yavin 4, so we're going to get a little bit more of the backstory of where things went so hardcore with Saw Gerrera, even though we got a little bit of that in Season 3, and we're going to find out basically how they come across Yavin 4, or maybe it is a case of them just rallying up with rebels that were already located there. There's also some speculation around this wolf that we see Ezra and Kanan riding, and I don't necessarily know what to make of all that. Star Wars Explained made a pretty decent video outlining how some of the theory surrounds that this wolf could be Ahsoka Tano. This could be her essential reincarnation as some kind of being within the Force, which, let's get weird with things if that's the case. I kind of doubt that that would be the case, but it could bring up a whole new world of questions and theories surrounding just what could happen to people that don't align with Jedi or Sith, but are strong in the Force. Perhaps the Bendu was once an actual human and now is the being that he is in his current state. There was also that shirt thing going on at Star Wars Celebration with Dave Filoni, where he came out during one of the panels wearing a shirt that said Ahsoka lives, ? And then during that panel changed his shirt to say Ahsoka lives with, I believe, an exclamation mark. So again, do with that what you will. As for me, I have no idea where to go with that part of speculation. Lastly is the first teaser trailer for Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And honestly, I feel like there's nothing I could possibly say about this trailer that if you're watching videos on YouTube about this trailer, you haven't probably already heard, except for one thing. And that one thing is how intrigued and excited and encouraged by this trailer I am that they are going to expand the lore of Star Wars, of the Force, of the Jedi, of the Wills, of the dark side. They're going to expand on all of that in a very big way. If you flash back to the original trilogy of Star Wars, the original Star Wars A New Hope gave us just a little taste of everything that was going on. We got introduced to these characters, we got introduced to these concepts, but we didn't really get to know them or see any of their development. I feel like in The Last Jedi, this is where we're going to see a lot of things finally develop in a big and hopefully very intriguing way. Just think back to how much more we learned about just the Force between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. Based on what we learned in A New Hope, the Force makes you feel good and you can feel it surrounding you, and it gives you confidence to make a shot in the Death Star. And if you have the blast shield on your helmet, you can still deflect laser beams with your lightsaber. But we didn't see much more of that. All of a sudden, in Empire Strikes Back, Luke goes to Dagobah, he's training under Yoda. We see that you can do so much more, that it's energy, it binds us, it surrounds us. All this lore about everything goes so much deeper, and I think with a handful of aspects, especially when you look at the overall canvas of the Star Wars canon, with the comic books, the TV shows, the movies currently going, and just everything that's been going on, they have set up so much framework to expand on the lore in ways that are friendly for a movie-going audience, but also will completely thrill everybody that's been following the deeper parts of the canon. And I think that is what excites me the most about this trailer and The Last Jedi coming this December. And the last thing that I have to say about this trailer is that in the subtle little clips, the voiceover clips from previous movies, one of them is "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi." The other is Obi-Wan Kenobi saying "seduced by the dark side." Two of them feature Obi-Wan Kenobi, which just leads me to believe a little bit more that the Rey Kenobi crowd, as far as Rey's parentage goes, is more and more looking like you guys might be right. But that is just my opinion about that particular thing, and those are my thoughts about these three biggest pieces of news from this past weekend. I would love to know your thoughts about what you liked the most about this past weekend, or if you were maybe let down by anything within these bits of news. As always, feel free to tell me about them in the comments, because this is a lot of new news about Star Wars, and I'm stoked to talk about it. I hope you're stoked to talk about it, so let's talk about it. So hit up those comments, we'll talk about it. Anyway, those are all my thoughts about Star Wars Celebration 2017 for now, and I might have a few other videos coming up with a couple theories about other things that I think might be going on within the Star Wars universe, particularly with where Luke Skywalker currently stands, if he thinks that it's time for the Jedi to end. So stay tuned for that. But above all else, everybody, thank you so much for watching.